Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we're going to be talking about the quintessential Autarch, the registered badass of the Eldari Codex. And man, honestly, when the Codex first came out and I saw the Autarch on foot and the Autarch Wayleaper, I really didn't think that much of them. I thought they were really good, but I didn't think people were going to be using them over the Phoenix Lords. And man, has my opinion of them changed completely. Autarchs are one of those models that on paper looks good, but maybe doesn't look as good as some of the other choices. But man, in game, they prove their worth over and over and over again. And in fact, lately, I've been exclusively using my Autarchs over my Phoenix Lords for several of my units. And that's for good reason, because they honestly do so much. They not only add damage to the unit they're in, they give you utility, they give you options, and they just give you absolute domination over a lot of different situations. So, without further ado, let us go ahead and dive right in and talk about why the Autarch is so amazing. So in this video, we are going to be going over their stats, weapons, and special rules, their strengths and weaknesses, their combos and synergies, and how to use and position Autarchs effectively on the battlefield. And just for the record, we are only going to be talking about the Autarch on foot today. We're going to be doing a winged Autarch or an Autarch Wayleaper video in the near future. So looking at their stats, pretty basic Eldar stats, nothing impressive, which is one of the reasons why looking at these guys for the first time, a lot of people are a little turned off because they don't have the 2+ save that the Phoenix Lords do. They don't have the 5 wounds. You know, they still have a 4+ invul, but unlike Jane Czar or, Malgan Raw or whatever, they just don't seem to have the same levels of durability and damage. However, they have a lot of options. So as far as their ranged weapons go, they can take pretty much any of the basic standard, weapons that aspect warriors can take. They can take a death spinner. They can take a dragon fusion gun. Now the death spinner is a little bit of a trap. I'm just going to let people know that right now. It's a weapon that's really only good in quantity. If you have multiple death spinners, they're really good against light infantry. Only one of them is really not going to do that much. The Dragon Fusion Gun is obviously really strong, being Assault, Melt to 3, hitting on a 2+ with Strength 9, AP -4, Damage D6 is super strong, especially when attached with an Exarch or Aspect Warrior squad that have those Aspect Warrior tokens that you can use. Really powerful. You also have the option of taking a Dragon Fusion Pistol. Again, this is a little bit of a memey weapon. The weapon is really too short range to make much of a difference. Range 6 instead of 12 of the Dragon Fusion Gun, but it does have the same stats, so there is that. Then you have the Reaper Launcher. Now the Reaper Launcher has 2 firing modes. It has the Star Shot, which is the Strength 10, AP -2, Damage 3 weapon that we all know and love from Dark Reapers. Of course, this one also ignores cover, which is interesting. I always thought that it was just the Dark Reapers that got to ignore cover, but apparently it's the Reaper Launcher itself. And you also get the Star Swarm option. Now, for some reason, the Star Swarm option only has Strength 4 for the Autarch, where it's Strength 5 for the Dark Reapers. Not sure if that's a typo, but they haven't caught on yet, so, hint, hint, GW, fix it. But anyway, yeah, you're probably not going to be using the Star Swarm option anyway on this guy most of the time. You're always going to be going for the Star Shot a vast majority of the time. Honestly, though, in my opinion, it seems like the Autarch's, Reaper Launcher tends to miss a lot, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is. He's not really there for, range damage, so to speak. And of course, if you don't want any of those cool weapon options, you can always go with the Shuriken Pistol, but of course, no one's ever going to take the Shuriken Pistol. All right, looking at the melee weapons, we have two of the iconic Aspect Warrior melee weapons here, the Banshee Blade and the Scorpion Chainsword. The Banshee Blade is actually pretty good at 5 attacks, getting a lot more attacks than a regular Howling Banshee. Hitting on a 2+ as well. Strength 4, AP -2, damage 2, but it does have anti-infantry 3+, which is really good, especially against really tough models like things that are toughness 7 or toughness 6 that you would normally be wounding on 4s with other weapons. The Scorpion Chainsword, unfortunately for me, is a bit of a miss because you're probably never going to be going into light infantry with an Autarch that's, joining either Dark Reapers or Howling Banshees or anything like that. So the Scorpion Chainsword, really not that good, but it does have a lot of attacks. 7 attacks, AP -1, damage 1, strength 4. All pretty decent. Sustained hits 1. Again, not terrible, but not that good either. And then we have the weapon option that everybody takes, and probably everybody should take, and that is the Starglaive. 4 attacks coming in at strength 6, AP -3, damage 3, and of course it hits on a 2+, which is huge because it used to hit on 3s and obviously used to be much worse. So the Starglaive is good because it allows the Autarch to hit really hard targets and actually have a chance at killing enemy characters. With damage 3, you have a really good chance with the Autarch of being able to kill a Lord of Contagion. So a Lord of Contagion has 6 wounds, and with Aspect Token support, you can easily put 2 wounds on a Lord of Contagion. If they miss both invul saves, which is possible, I know chances are they will make one of them, but let's be real, we've all watched people fail 2-4 saves before. That will put a Lord of Contagion down. So yeah, it's not mathematically certain that it's going to happen, but it allows the Autarch to trade up into bigger targets and allows it to also just kill 3 wound models pretty handily. As far as its abilities go, it is a leader and has battle focus, of course, but the real abilities are the Superlative Strategist and the Path of Command. The first ability allows it to reroll advance rolls made for the unit that it's leading and reroll rolls performing agile maneuvers. So your fade back or your opportunity seized, you get to reroll those rolls as well. So that's really effective, right? If an opponent has to fall back from you, you can use opportunity seized and you can get a really good distance on that roll, which is awesome. And also rerolling advance rolls is peak. Path of Command is really good as well. Once per battle round, 1 model from your army, so you can't use it with multiple Autarchs in a single turn. But if you do use it on your unit, you can reduce the CP cost of a stratagem by 1 when used on that unit. So that's very powerful as well. That makes this model really CP efficient. Now, I will say with the Superlative Strategist ability, this goes really well with Howling Banshees. It's not so good on other units. Now, obviously, rerolling advance rolls is just a good thing to have in general. Rerolling agile maneuvers is a good thing to have in general, but it's super good on units that can consistently get into combat and also have the power to punch through enemy armor. And also because Banshees can advance and charge. So you can reroll those advance rolls and charge right afterward. It's a really good synergy right there. All right, as far as the units that the Autarch can lead Dark Reapers, Dire Avengers, Fire Dragons, Guardian Defenders, Howling Banshees, Storm Guardians, and Striking Scorpions. Basically all the foot aspect warriors and Guardian units. Now, I'm going to say this right off the bat. I think there are a number of units here that Autarchs just do not work with. And I'll kind of list them out for you guys right here, so you guys aren't throwing them into squads that just don't really make sense. So the first one is Dire Avengers. Autarchs do not make sense in Dire Avenger units because Dire Avenger units are primarily a shooting unit and they don't want to be anywhere near close combat. Not only that, but they're kind of a close ranged unit and they don't really benefit from what the Autarch can really do for them, right? They already have grenades, even though a free grenade would be nice. They already kind of have grenades, so, they're probably not going to need that. Also, they don't really need the extra combat potential that the Autarch can bring them, because they're usually going to want to be with a Zerman if they are being used at all. Dire Avengers are a little bit of a weak unit right now, and they kind of need a stronger unit like a Zerman to prop them up. Fire Dragons are another unit that this guy really doesn't mesh well with. Reason being is he's essentially just another Fire Dragon if you think of him like that, and Fire Dragons are a trading unit. If you add a super, high amount of value to Fire Dragons in, in characters, it's really not going to be great for them, especially a character that doesn't actually add to the damage or utility of the unit, right? Again, they already have grenades, so they don't really need grenades, which is what the Autarch brings. A free stratagem can be useful, but again, it's not going to be something that's that useful. And in most situations, Fuegan is just going to be a better option, or just more Fire Dragons. Both Guardian Squad units are better off with Eldrad or a Farseer or Warlocks or something of, that nature. Not necessarily with an Autarch. Being able to use a free stratagem on Guardian Defenders may be good in Guardian Battle Host, but it's certainly not that good in other detachments. So, again, being able to use a free strat to bring your Guardians back from reserve in Guardian Battle Host and bring them back to full strength is awesome with an Autarch, don't get me wrong, but it's not that strong in other detachments. And same thing goes for Storm Guardians. Howling Banshees are awesome with an Autarch, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And lastly, Striking Scorpions. I think Striking Scorpions actually can work with an Autarch, especially in Aspect Host where they're really hard hitting. But I think the problem is they don't have fights first natively, and the Autarch isn't helping them with that at all. So a lot of the utility of the Autarch is kind of wasted on the Striking Scorpions. Now, it also comes with this special rule called Aspect Training, and basically what it is if it's leading a Howling Banshee unit, it has fights first, and if it's leading a Striking Scorpions unit, it gains Infiltrators, Scout 7, and Stealth. I kind of wish the Aspect Training also applied to Dire Avenger and Fire Dragon units. Like, that might actually make the Autarch a good inclusion in those types of squads. Like, could you imagine if Aspect Training gave this guy rerolls against vehicles with his fusion gun or with his weapons? Or in a Dire Avenger squad, if he gained sustained hits while within half range with his weapons, I think that would be so much better, and actually I think it would give a lot of flavor to the Autarch. But yeah, unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way, which is another reason why the Autarch is not that good with Dire Avenger, Fire Dragon, or Striking Scorpion units. Even though it can infiltrate and has stealth and stuff like that, again, Striking Scorpions are one of those units that you probably don't want to be too expensive because they're expendable. As far as his Wargear options go, he can replace his Shuriken Pistol with a Death Spinner, Dragon Fusion Gun, Dragon Fusion Pistol, or Reaper Launcher. In most cases, you're going to go with the Dragon Fusion Gun or Reaper Launcher, depending on what unit he's with. And his weapon can be replaced with a Banshee Blade or Scorpion Chainsword, but of course, you're probably going to go with his base weapon at all times, which is the Starglaive. Now, possibly the coolest thing about the Autarch is that he's cheap. He's only 75 points, which is an absolute steal. It's an absolute bargain for what he brings to the table. As far as his keywords go, of course, he has the grenades keyword, like we spoke about. Being able to chuck a grenade into something is very good. He's also infantry, a character, and of course, Eldari. All right, let's talk about their strengths and weaknesses. So first of all, they have a strong melee presence. Being able to dish out 4 attacks at strength 6, AP -3, damage 3 is no joke. They also have a solid range attack. So, a better range attack than most other Eldari characters aside from the Phoenix Lords. They also make advance and battle focus rolls more reliable. Getting that reroll is extremely important because, I don't know about you guys, but how many times have you rolled that 1 on the Banshee, advance roll, and just not been able to get into charge range or had to use a command point for it, right? To command reroll. So being able to reroll that is really good. And it provides a lot of CP efficiency. Being able to pop stratagems for free every round is insanely good. As far as their weaknesses, there's really only one weakness that it has, in that it's fragile, right? It's a 75-point model, it's Eldar, it's going to be fragile. It's a little bit tougher than a Farseer, but just slightly, because it does have a 3-up armor save. As far as its combos and synergies go, being able to join Dark Reapers can give them free damage or re-embark stratagems, which is pretty good. They can also join Howling Banshees to get a free grenade, heroic intervention, or perhaps even a warrior's focus if you're using them in Aspect Host, as well as some other things, right? I mean, for example, a free command reroll here and there when you need to make a charge or, something like that. And although they can also join Fire Dragons, Dire Avengers, Striking Scorpions, and Guardians, they don't really provide much of a benefit to those units. Now, the other thing about the Autarch is, as far as the combos and synergies part goes, they have a lot of combos with Doom, right? Also, weirdly enough, Guide. Now, I say Guide normally because, Guide is funny because normally you're hitting on 2s, but now that we're going up against Death Guard, which have pretty much a universal ability to make us -1 to hit, you might actually want Guide, because now hitting on 2s instead of 3s can actually be a big deal for Howling Banshee units. So casting Guide on a unit of, Deathblight Terminators, or whatever they're called, the Death Shroud Terminators, and hitting them with a unit of Howling Banshees will be a lot easier than, hitting on 3s and then wounding on 3s, right? Every little bit of damage counts. Doom is also pretty good, right? Because normally these guys are strength 6. They don't have anti-infantry with the Starglaive. So being able to wound things on 4s instead of 5s, or, 3s instead of 4s, is a pretty big breakpoint for them as well. Alrighty guys, so we're going to go ahead and hop into Tabletop Simulator in just a second so that I can show you some of the tricks on how to best use Autarchs on the battlefield. Okay everybody, welcome to our Tabletop Simulator example on how to use and position the Autarch effectively on the battlefield. So the Autarch, as we've kind of talked about, is one of the most versatile leader units in the entire Codex. And actually, I do think, point for point, it is the most efficient model as far as leaders go in our book. And it does a lot for you, especially in the early turns of the game. Now, a lot of people think that the Autarch is just a, kind of damage multiplier for your combat units. And it definitely can do that. The Autarch does have a lot of extra damage that it can apply to a Howling Banshee unit, for example. So we're going to show you guys a couple of examples here that illustrate how versatile and how much pressure an Autarch can put on your opponent, even in the early game. So one of the biggest questions I get on the channel all the time is, Proxy Hammer, what if I go second, right? What if I go second and my opponent has units that fly? How am I possibly going to stop my opponent from being able to just run over me and charge me, right? Because in Pariah Nexus, as we now know, hopefully by now, the deployment zones are very close together, right? So the biggest example of this is probably sweeping engagement, which is what I have laid out here. This is a common deployment type that people play on. So when you're looking to protect your units, it can be hard, right? It can be very difficult to protect your units on this deployment if you are not using the right amount of screening tools. But not only that, tools that actually prevent your opponents from being able to charge you. Now, there are a couple different things you can do here. One is you can screen them with units of Scorpions. So I want to do a video on this later on, but I'm just going to show you guys real quick an effective means of screening your opponent's flying units if you have a unit of scorpions or something like that. A lot of people ask me about this question, so I'll go ahead and address it right now. The first way to do it, not even talking about the Autarch yet, but if you have an opponent that has some jump infantry right here, right, maybe they even have advance and charge. Well, what you're going to do is you're just going to put your scorpions, and again, you're probably going to deploy your scorpions last, just so you know where your opponent is. You're going to measure out 12 inches from your opponent, and then probably about another 4 inches. So you're going to measure about 16 inches away from your opponent here. Let's just do this. Boom, right there. We're going to put our scorpions right at that mark, right on top of that, right there. And we're just going to kind of spread these guys out a little bit. Make sure they're all within 2. You'd be surprised how far these guys can actually stretch out. By the way, you can actually stretch these guys out from one objective to the other if you wanted to, but we're not going to go ahead and do that because we're screening with them right now. So we just have them just like this, right? Now, basically, your opponent has 2 choices here. Either A, they can, just kind of charge into these scorpions and probably just kill them, right? Or B, we can set up something else. We can set up a heroic intervention with our Howling Banshees. So we just have to make sure our Howling Banshees are at least, try to get them within 6 inches of the enemy unit. It's going to be kind of hard in this position, but let's say we don't have warp spiders here. We have the warp spiders over here instead. And we have our Autarch right up against the wall. Now, normally you wouldn't want to be right up against the wall because you can get charged, but Howling Banshees don't really care about that, right? That's really only to protect shooting units or make it harder for your opponent to get into combat with you. But if we're doing something like this on the first turn, if we go first, we can always just move the Howling Banshees back. We don't really need to worry about that, right? We can move them back 1.1 inch to make sure that things can't get into combat with us. Now, what this allows us to do is this allows us to protect the scorpions from combat. So yes, our opponent could definitely shoot the scorpions, but we're in heroic intervention range now, right? So we're well within range. 6 inches is right here. If our opponent wants to charge us, they're gonna have to get in between the bases of these models right here, right? So we're good on that front. So if our opponent decides, you know what, I know the scorpions are there, but it's a good trade, an 80-point unit for, an 85-point unit, I'm going to do it. I'm going to move forward my guys. I'm going to do my advance and charge. I'm going to get within 1 inch here. Boom. And I'm going to charge in, right? I'm going to make it in the base. Make it in base. Whoops. Make it into base contact, base contact, base contact, right? Making sure that they're still in coherency with each other. And, they're going to do their mortal wound stuff. So they're going to, roll their mortal wound dice coming in. They'll probably kill a couple scorpions. You can just take out the couple that are on the sides. The Exarch probably shouldn't be there. Boom. Whoops. There we go. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to heroically intervene. Now, you guys might be wondering, well, it's turn 1. You only have 1 CP, right? So how is that a real possibility if you want to use other stratagems as well? Well, that's where the Autarch comes in handy. The Autarch comes with that free stratagem that they can use once per round, which heroic intervention, by the way, guys, great stratagem to use on the Autarch. So we're just going to heroically intervene. We're going to roll our dice. We're probably going to get the, what is required, like a 5. Yeah, we need to roll a 5 there. And here's the cool part about this. The heroic intervention was free. We have 1 CP. If we fail, we can command reroll it. Unless you're really unlucky and Isha really just doesn't like you, you're going to get the charge roll here. And you're going to be able to charge in. Now, what this is going to allow your Banshees to do is you're going to, pile in here because you get to select to fight first because, of course, you're not the active player. So we're just going to go like this. We're going to base contact. We're going to, we're going to get into base with the Autarch here. And we're just going to make room for the other Banshees. We're going to get into base, and then we're just going to just move right on behind there so we can still attack with these other girls. Okay. Now, here's what's going to happen, right? Banshees are going to attack. Autarch's going to attack. This squad is going to evaporate, right? Doesn't matter what it is, guys. If it's a, unit of death company, whatever, it's dead, right? I'm just going to let you guys know right now, Banshees with Autarch, they don't play around. They're gone. So here's what we can do next, right? If we want to, we can simply consolidate 6 inches onto the objective now, right? We can consolidate 6, get up onto this objective, can move through our own units, it's fine. We are infantry, and these are friendly scorpions. We can move up our 6. Boom. Oops. And now we are in a great position with advance and charge. Remember, the Autarch allows us to reroll advance rolls. We're in a great position to go like this, right? They move 8 inches. We can even move them an additional 2 inches if the opponent doesn't have an Overwatch threat. We'll do our advance roll, which, at least gets a 3 with a reroll. And then whatever's behind here is now threatened. So whatever their supporting units are, we can now threaten those units directly. Okay? So that's one thing you can do with them. However, a good opponent will not do this. Okay? And here's where the mind games come into play, right? If we put these guys here, turn 1, and we put these scorpions right here, as we have previously said, your opponent is not going to make that charge. They're not going to do it. Unless they want to throw the game, they're not going to actually commit to that. Because it's going to give you all the power, right? You're going to not only kill their unit, but you're also going to have scorpions left over. They can go and do something else. And you're going to be able to get free movement out of your opponent. So chances are they're not going to do it. So for everybody wondering, well, how do you screen out flying infantry? Well, you can't screen them out in the traditional way, right? You can't move block them in the traditional way where you can just put a unit right in front of them. But what you can do is you can bait them into a stupid choice, right? You can kind of get them into a position where if they do charge your units, you're going to heroically intervene and you're going to just absolutely destroy them. Now, what if they have multiple units doing that, right? What if they have units over here doing it? Well, if you have units of rangers or scorpions, you just have to put them 16 inches away. By the way, this works pretty much every time unless they roll that big 6 with their advance roll, which could happen, but it's not likely. And with the Marines' big bases, chances are even with a 6, they're still not going to be able to fly over you if you're at 16 inches. Just because of the way their bases are and because of engagement rules, being in engagement range, they're just not going to be able to really get behind your unit. So therefore, they're going to have to charge that unit of rangers, that unit of scorpions, and they're just going to, at the very best, trade evenly with the unit, right? And that's at the very best. And also, like I said, you're probably going to have a unit of Banshees nearby, at least one of those units. So if they choose to kind of go after more than one unit of yours, they're going to pay the price for it. So having an Autarch is really a good idea for these defensive maneuvers because it gives you that free stratagem, gives you those rerolls, right? It allows you, if you go second, it allows you to get that free command reroll if you need it for the, heroic intervention charge range and so forth. Okay. And then, of course, Howling Banshees also protect your more vulnerable units like Warp Spiders. Warp Spiders obviously don't want to be charged. They want to be in a position, right? Turn 1, you want to be moving these Warp Spiders like this into position where you can actually, jump anywhere you want to on the battlefield, right? So to be able to protect this unit from being charged, you have a unit of Howling Banshees nearby with an Autarch. And this can be the case for the first couple turns of the game. Turns 1, turns 2, maybe even turns 3 while these warp spiders are waiting for a good chance to, move block something or take something out or score an objective, an important objective. Then your Howling Banshees can just babysit them. And your opponent is not going to be able to successfully charge these guys without getting Howling Banshees in their face. And again, because your opponent just went, after your Howling Banshees are done killing whatever unit charges the Warp Spiders, you can do that 6-inch consolidation, and then you can go ahead and just go to town on your opponent's units in the deep field, right? Okay, so that's one kind of thing that the Autarch can do that's really cool. The other thing that the Autarch can do is it can actually threaten vehicles. So this Banshee unit is, primarily an anti-heavy infantry unit. It has no business dealing with tanks. But weirdly enough, if your opponent has like a Rhino or something towing the objective, and how many times have you seen something like this, right, in your games? Like your opponent moves a little Rhino up to the objective, try to sneak on. Well, we can just do something like this. Autarch, these girls, they advance forward. Maybe we get like a, we're doing the +2 movement. Then we get, our advance roll. We move 13 inches total, which is pretty average for an Autarch with a reroll on advance rolls. We get really close like this, and or maybe we don't even advance. Maybe we just go normally, right? Maybe we like move this guy back like 3 inches. Yeah, 3 inches. That's what I said we would do. And maybe we just throw a grenade, right? So we don't do the advance roll, but we use our free stratagem to throw a grenade. We do 3 mortal wounds to it on average, right? I think rhinos have like 9 wounds. And that puts it in range on an average dice roll of being able to be killed by the Autarch's fusion gun, right? The dragon fusion gun. Let's see, we're within 6, so we're within range. We can roll to hit, which we hit on a 2-up, right? Let's just see what happens. We hit on a 2-up. We're going to wound basically automatically because of an aspect token, but let's roll to wound. Yeah, we're just going to change that to a 6 for aspect token. And our opponent doesn't get a save. Well, yeah, they'd get like, what is that, a 6-up cover save. They're probably not going to make the 6-up. They don't. And we're going to probably kill it. Now, when you roll this, right, it's a 3, and you're going to add the Dragon Fusion Gun's Melt a 3 to it. So that's going to be 6 more damage. The Rhino's dead, right? So the Rhino dies, and your opponent has 2 options now, which is really funny. Your opponent can either bring out their Marines on the objective and get some OC on it, or they can move the Marines off the objective back here and protect them, but have no OC on the objective. Let me tell you what, guys. It is a win-win situation for you. If your opponent does this kind of thing, your Banshees then charge into these guys and wipe them out. You still hold the objective. If your opponent's over here, okay, then I just stay back, and that's fine. Totally fine, right? I don't need to make the charge on that unit because I have prevented my opponent from being able to actually score objectives in the middle of the battlefield. Of course, the Banshees are probably dead, right? But I mean, we still have some little things we could do, right? Like if you're going against an assault type army, they're not going to have much shooting. So like assault intercessors, for example, are not going to be able to realistically kill more than a couple Banshees on shooting. And if they choose to charge, they're done, right? So your opponent's going to need to shoot the Banshees off the objective. If they try to get them into combat, it's going to be kind of hell for them because they have fights first, right? So that's something you should be thinking about as well. Obviously, it's not always going to be combat oriented. There's going to be shooting involved. But like I said, if you can kill your opponent's Rhino and get them off the objective, prevent them from scoring primary, the Banshees have kind of already done their job. And then, of course, you know, don't count the Autarch out alone. If the Banshees end up dying and the Autarch survives, because the Autarch does have a better save, then you could easily just battle focus out, right? You could battle focus to the corner here maybe, or maybe you get a good battle focus roll and you can go over here into this wall, right? Which is not that hard because guess what? Remember, guys, the Autarch, as long as there's one Banshee left in the unit, the Autarch gets to re-roll battle focus rolls. That's the other cool thing. So let's say your opponent shoots these Banshees and kills everybody but the Exarch, right? Kills 4 Banshees. And then you have the Exarch and the Autarch left. Well, you can go ahead and roll the dice, see what you get. On average dice, you probably get a 4, which is a 5, right? 5 inches. So 5 inches can put us right here. Could put us right here. Well, not quite right there, but it could put us, you know, into cover here, right? We could do kind of a lot of stuff with that. We can get it out of line of sight of a lot of enemy models. So really the only models that can see are in this direct vicinity. If we move them like right here in the corner, that's perfect because the only models that can actually see them, guys, sorry, I'll move this Rhino, are anything right in this pocket right here, down this way, or right in here, right? And if our opponent does have something over here, but maybe they don't have anything over here, besides these guys that just shot at them, then we can move these guys from this position, right, in the middle, can move them right here. We could also just still tow the objective. Now, it's important to still tow the objective in some cases because if your opponent has nothing left to shoot them, they're still going to have to deal with these guys, right? So maybe they charge their Marines into here, right? And they just try to out damage you. But if that's the case, you still have an Autarch and a Howling Banshee Exarch that have fights first. So they're going to be hard-pressed to actually be able to do enough damage after they've suffered damage from the Exarch. By the way, the Exarch hits on 2s, wounds on 3s, right? So chances are that's going to be 2 dead. You know, just doing some quick napkin math here, probably 2 dead. The Autarch's probably going to kill exactly 2 more. Because, again, it's the same math, right? So there's 1 Assault Intercessor left. The Assault Intercessor attacks. Let's say they get lucky and they kill the Exarch. Well, we just have these 2 left, right, on the objective. Now, the Assault Intercessor, because it has OC2, will out-OC the Autarch. So you're probably not going to get objective points for this. But I will say this. A simple command reroll at some point, right? And again, if you use it, you could use it for free, or you could just use a CP. A simple command reroll can turn this Assault Intercessor into a dead Assault Intercessor. So there is times, it depends what the dice roll, but there is times when you would want to go for a command reroll just to kill that last model, right? Like let's say you have 4 attacks, you get 4 hits, but you only get 2 wounds. Well, if there's only 2 left and they have a 6-up save, maybe it's better to just go for 3 wounds so that these guys are going to automatically die, right? Because if you can force 3 saves on 6-up on 2 intercessors, chances are your opponent's not rolling 2 6s, right? So that would be a good place to use a command reroll so that you can then score the objective, right? I hope that makes sense. Anyway. So yeah, the Autarch gives a lot of versatility to the Howling Banshees. And I guess that's kind of my point, is that, you know, a lot of people just view the Autarch as like a damage multiplier for the Banshees and like, oh, they can use a free stratagem, or, you know, the Autarch can use a free stratagem to get back into a transport, right? But I think the Autarch goes way harder than that. I think the Autarch has a lot of other things that it can do that can really throw off your opponent. Another thing you can do, which is not too common, but it is something you could do, and if you have multiple units in your army that have fights first that get charged, you can only select one of those to fight, right? So let me give you an example, right? Let's say we have a unit of Howling Banshees here and they're fighting. I don't know. Oh, did I just delete those? Yikes. Okay, let's add some more Assault Intercessors into the bunch, right? Put some more Banshees in here too. Let's say our Autarch and Banshees are fighting some Assault Intercessors. The Assault Intercessors charge in here, right? Just like we said before. And then over on this side of the battlefield, we have some Banshees over here. And our opponent decides to charge them as well with some more Assault Intercessors, right? Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, that's silly. Both of those Assault Intercessors are going to die, right? Well, actually, no, they're not. And basically, here's the reason for that, right? Because when they charge in, you get to select a unit to fight first, right? So that means you either choose these girls over here, this, this Autarch and this Howling Banshee Exarch, or these girls. And whatever you don't pick is basically going to die, right? Because your opponent also has fights first because they charged. And then, you're going to get smashed. So the interesting thing about this is, let's say that you choose to fight with this Howling Banshee squad first. And then, you pick up maybe 4 of these guys, which is average, has the sergeant left. And then your opponent chooses to fight over here. I don't know why I did that. If your opponent fights, you're probably going to lose the Exarch and you're probably going to lose the Autarch, right? Well, here's the cool thing about this. These guys didn't fight yet, right? The Exarch and the Autarch did not fight yet. If you are playing in Ynnari, right? If you are using, or actually, not just Ynnari, but also Aspect Host, you guys have a fight on death stratagem, right? The Autarch can use it for, it's normally 2 CP in the Ynnari and it's automatic fight on death. You can use it to basically reduce the CP cost by 1. So you have a 1 CP fight on death from this Autarch and this Howling Banshee Exarch. So the beginning of the fight phase, you obviously are going to select that for the Howling Banshees, right? When they're selected as the targets of attacks, because they're going to die. And they're going to get you good value back for that CP. For that single CP, the last ability your Autarch ever uses, you're going to get 6 attacks, or actually, 7 attacks back into these guys at strength 6, AP -3, damage 3. You can very easily take these guys out with decent rolls, right? And then that way, you have now killed 2 of the units that are coming into you. Or if, you're lucky, you're a bit lucky. You have to be a bit luckier, but for free, for 0 CP, because it's a 1 CP strat, you can get fights on death on a 4-up or a 3-up if you use an aspect token in Aspect Host, which can help you as well. So that's something else you can think about also. Now, if there's a ton of combats going along, across the battlefield, then you can maybe consider the combat interrupt stratagem, right? Which can, basically you select a unit and that unit fights next. That's not usually relevant with Howling Banshees and fights first units, but it's something to think about, right? It's usually 2 CP. It's usually very expensive. With the Autarch, you can make it 1 CP. So there's a lot of cool little things that the Autarch can do. So that feeds into your opponent not being able to do what they want to do in a turn, right? If they want to charge you turn 1 because they have the movement to do it, they're Space Marines, so they hit extremely hard, right? Especially against Eldari models. They're just not going to be able to do that because you have defenses up, right? You not only are screening out enemy models, but you're also in a position to heroically intervene so that even if they do crash into your Striking Scorpions, they're going to still get wiped out, right? So those are some of the things that the Autarch and Foot can do with melee units like Howling Banshees. Now, when we're talking about what an Autarch can do with a range unit like Dark Reapers, it's pretty simple, but there's a little bit of nuance to it, right? Like, you have your Wave Serpent back here, you drop out your Dark Reapers, you move your Dark Reapers into a position, right? Like maybe you move them up to here. You just have to make sure that they're all, and again, these little fins count, so all within, 6 inches of the fins. Make sure they're all within, and then you can shoot at something downfield. Like if something's on this objective, you can shoot that. If something's over here, you can go ahead and shoot that. You can move these guys out like maybe a little bit like this. Right, make sure that their bases can all draw a line of sight down here. You can shoot something to death, and then you can use your Autarch for a free re-embark back into the Wave Serpent. Right, that's a pretty easy one. Now, there's another thing that you guys might not know about, Autarchs and Dark Reapers. Now, personally, I think the Autarch with the Dark Reapers is a pretty good thing because it's basically giving you 5 free CP across the course of the game, right? Because you're going to use that re-embark stratagem every single turn. The Autarch's damage is not that good. It's just basically another Dark Reaper, right? But really, the Autarch for 75 points is getting insane amounts of value for you just because it can give you those free CP. And in detachments like Aspect Host or War Host, that can mean a lot. And you put that on top of having Eldrad in your list, and you're basically getting 10 free CP over the course of the game. Because again, Eldrad with Storm Guardians, camping your home objective, screening your backfield, maybe pushing up on turns 2 or 3 to get an objective. In the past, by the way, when the Index was around, I was always an advocate of Storm Guardians being a little more aggressive. But since we've lost Fortune, since we've lost, universal access to lightning fast reactions, I don't think it's as good of an idea nowadays to push your Storm Guardians up early. I thought that in the Index, but things have changed slightly. What I used to like to do is on turns 1 and 2, when I wasn't pushing forward an Avatar of Cain or, something tough, I would push forward my Storm Guardians. I'd throw Fortune on them. And then on top of that, if my opponent shot at them, I'd throw lightning fast reactions on them, and they would be very hard to kill for, intercessors. But the game has evolved a little bit, and it's become more lethal since the Index. Way more lethal. So that just doesn't really work anymore. So, having Eldrad and Storm Guardians in the backfield, generating CP, popping out every once in a while to doom something in the midfield is the way to go, in my honest opinion, nowadays. But yeah, that can be very effective use of an Autarch. Now, the Autarch with other units, I think there's a argument for having it with the Striking Scorpion unit, but I'm a little dubious of it because Striking Scorpions don't innately have fights first. So if it gets charged, you could just lose the whole unit, and you have to really use that carefully. I know some of you might be using an Autarch with Scorpions. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think it's very reliant on getting a first turn charge, and I don't think Scorpions are really necessarily the best at doing that. They're good if they get the first turn and your opponent leaves something open, but chances are you're going to be going against somebody that's at least adequate enough to realize that if the Scorpions charge something, that, they have a fights first unit, or they have something to heroically intervene within range, right, to kill the Scorpions in return. So first turn charges with Scorpions are sometimes good when your opponent doesn't have the resources to allocate for heroic intervention or anything like that. But, usually your opponent does have something like that. Let's be real, at least in this day and age. So yeah, the Autarch on foot has a lot of versatility, but let me know in the comments how you guys like to use the Autarch on foot. My favorite combo, of course, is with the Banshees, and my second favorite is with the Reapers. The only reason it's my second favorite is because the Autarch with the Reapers really is just there for CP efficiency. Doesn't do a lot in combat, just kind of stays in the backfield and shoots and maneuvers around and stuff. Doesn't really do much else. But, of course, also maybe in the dire situation where your Dark Reapers are in combat, he can give a little combat potential, I guess. But yeah, my favorite is with the Howling Banshees. Man, it absolutely wrecks. And actually, I love Jane Czar with Howling Banshees. I totally love her. But one advantage that the Autarch has, aside from the utility that the Autarch brings, is the smaller base. I can't tell you guys how many times I could not fit Jane Czar into combat between a wall because her base is just bigger than 32 millimeters, right? The Autarch's base is a 32 millimeter base. It's on the same size as a Marine base. Jane Czar is on a Terminator base. She's on a 40 mil. And it makes a difference, ladies and gentlemen. It really does. Jane Czar, as far as damage goes, blows the Autarch out of the water, especially against character units. But the Autarch has the just innate ability to just absolutely fit where he, fit into tight spaces. He can, throw a grenade. He can, shoot a fusion gun. He has a lot of utility. He has a lot more uses than just killing heavy infantry. So, yeah, the Autarch is, in my honest opinion, one of the best characters in the entire Codex as far as his points efficiency. It's just very good. All right, guys, that is going to be it for our tabletop simulator example. Let me know if, I forgot anything. I'm pretty sure I kind of covered the basics with these guys. Obviously, you can also use them more aggressively as well, but that's going to depend a lot on the board state. And I truly believe that using them defensively in the first couple turns of the game is the way to go, at least until turns 3. I think turns 4 and 5, you can kind of release them. But again, it does largely depend on what your opponent's doing and how far, off you are in victory points and stuff like that, and just the objectives you draw and so forth. But the Autarch and Banshees, a great tool that can achieve a lot on the battlefield. All right, guys, back to the video. Alrighty, so in conclusion, the Autarch is absolutely the most points efficient leader in the Codex. At only 75 points, it gives you so much utility, so much extra damage to the unit that honestly, I'm surprised it is only 75 points. Truly, I think that it's super good value for what it costs. And obviously, I hope it doesn't get nerfed or anything like that. I don't think it is, but it is a really efficient model. And wow, I've been using them in almost every one of my games. In Seer Council, I've used them in Aspect Host. I've used them in pretty much every single detachment aside from Windrider Host and Spirit Conclave. And I've never been disappointed by them. There's never been a game where I've said, man, my Autarch didn't do anything that game. He didn't make up his value. He has always consistently made up his points. And weirdly enough, I can't say that about units like Fuegan, Jane Czar, Azurman, and honestly, sometimes, I hate to say it, but even Eldrad. There's been games where I've made a few mistakes with Eldrad and I'm like, oh, I just wasted 110 points. But I've never actually said that about the Autarch because even if you do make a mistake, right? Even if you do miss a charge, you have that ability to re-roll the dice. It's really insane. Like obviously you can make mistakes with the Autarch, but the Autarch allows you to kind of play in a way that is a little bit more assured, right? And again, we don't have a lot of rerolls nowadays, guys. Back in the Index, we had a ton of rerolls on stuff. We had fate dice. We could guarantee charge distances. We could guarantee advance rolls. We can't really do that anymore. So having something that allows us free rerolls every single round with CP rerolls, or perhaps even things like, reroll reroll advance rolls or reroll agile maneuver rolls, that is really, really good. So yeah, the Autarch, I have to say, in my honest opinion, even though I'm an Eldradi lover, I think the Autarch is probably the most efficient leader in the entire book. And yeah, let me know in the comment section what you guys think of Autarchs, how you guys use them. I know that, some of you might use them in slightly different ways than I do, and they've, maybe you guys have had more success with the Autarch with Fire Dragons or, Dire Vengers or something like that. I've really only used them with Dark Reapers and Howling Banshees, I tried using them in the beginning with Striking Scorpions and never really found much success with them. I always felt like it was just going to be better if I ran them with Howling Banshees or some other unit. But let me know in the comments what you guys think, and thank you so much once again for everybody who has supported the channel. Thank you to all my Patreon members and channel members. I really appreciate your support. If you do want to become a channel member or Patreon supporter, I have links for that in the description below. I would really appreciate the help and support. Helps me create content for you guys on a, bi-weekly and tri-weekly basis. Also, if you're interested in joining the channel's Discord, you can just sign up for a free Patreon free trial to join up. Or, you can support as a channel member. Just go ahead and shoot me an email. By the way, guys, if you become a channel member and want access to the Discord, just shoot me an email and I'll go ahead and give you the link for that. And then lastly, if you want to, grab some Eldar inspired apparel, check out my channel store page. It has a bunch of cool Eldar designs on it, that are more subtle so that, when you're walking out in the street, not everybody is going to think you're a weirdo for having some Eldar stuff on there. But at the same time, people at the shop will recognize it and will absolutely love it. And lastly, I do have an Amazon affiliate link for those of you who want to grab discounted Eldar minis on Amazon. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.